Hello, my name's Hannah Shain, host of SmartBug on Tap. Welcome back to our third season of SmartBug's weekly podcast. These episodes are short, actionable podcasts offering quick and useful marketing ideas that you can put into use right away. And each episode is only about 10 minutes long. On today's episode, I want to dig in on buyer personas, but not in the traditional sense. Yeah, we all create buyer personas all the time, but I'm talking about who's that buyer outside of their 9 to 5 day job? What are their interests in the 5 to 9 realm? And how, as marketers, can we appeal to the entire persona? My question is, who's that person behind the persona? Let's dive in. So I recently attended Inbound, HubSpot's annual conference that's geared towards revenue leaders in marketing, sales, and CS. And while it's been a couple weeks since the event, this topic really just stuck out to me as one of my favorite takeaways from the conference. We're kind of thinking through, how do you find and how do you appeal to that person behind the persona? And one of my absolute most favorite sessions that I went to was actually a sponsor session by Alice, one of the kind of swag giveaway vendors that partners with us and with a few others. And the person that was presenting was Nina Butler. She's director of event experience. She had some awesome takeaways from the conference. Highly recommend going to her session. But one of my favorite quotes or kind of stats that she cited was from a recent study by Adobe. She noted that 66% say that encountering an unpersonalized experience will stop them dead in their tracks in their buyer experience. People are not buying for the product, they're buying for that experience. They're buying because they're interested and they're engaged in that moment. So as marketers, or field marketers even, as you're thinking about different touch points along the journey, how do you create kind of something that goes from ordinary to interesting? And maybe even from an event standpoint, are you turning your ordinary industry events into interest events? And are you appealing to their 5 to 9 passions? And those 5 to 9 passions, sometimes they're professional motivators. So it's keeping them driving. If they're going to log on for the day and work from 9 to 5 and kind of bust out their job, maybe what's motivating them behind that is actually something that goes on in their personal life on the back end. So can you, as a marketer, really tap into that professional motivator that's really something very personal? And can you focus on creating a memorable event? I love this concept from the session because it really tapped into HubSpot's flywheel. If you think about kind of that flywheel from attract to engage to delight, this really taps into all of those different stages, but especially delight. It can be quite a surprise if a company is thinking through, how can we appeal to your personal passions and bring those worlds together in a professional way? But what better way to delight somebody than to appeal to their personal passions outside of work? All right, so let's think about, how can you get started? If you are kind of already well underway, have your personas documented, think about creating kind of that next layer below it and starting to ask some questions about, what are those personal passions outside of the persona? We might have, I know on our end, some of our key personas are Mary the marketer or strategic Steve, producer Patty. And those people, like, we know to a fact exactly what falls into those personas. We know the types of job titles that they fall into, the types of content that they read, the challenges that we're trying to help them address. But did we really ever ask, like, are they into, cooking or skiing or maybe rom-com movies or, I don't know, comic books outside of work that become some of their personal passions? And if you ask some of those questions in kind of an elegant way, or start to really understand and appeal to those buyers, maybe you can create events and memorable experiences along the way. One way that we're doing this at SmartBug is we're playing around with the idea of hosting memorable events that offer kind of a combined experience where you're getting value out of attending and you're getting the value out of the marketing that we're offering, but then also tapping into just something that's fun and memorable. Kind of thinking about it more broadly and timely for right now, you could be looking at a variety of different types of events, from holiday parties to client or prospect happy hours. And for us, we're looking at doing customer advisory boards. And so, the kind of how behind this, you could turn one of those happy hours into an activity hour. Maybe you're bringing a mixologist or a sommelier over, and they're offering kind of this experience that gets shipped to the person, and they have a note card inside of it that tells them when to open that up. But then also it creates this like brand attachment to your company, offered that and brought that to them. The other tip that I really loved from Nina during that session was to consider asking your clients. Use surveys to find out what their passions are, and then start to segment your clients and prospects into their like-minded interests. And it doesn't always have to be about drinking. I think there's some really great cocktail vendors out there, definitely, that can offer alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks, and it can be a very fun way to kind of mix up some of a happy hour. But you could also explore doing some kid-friendly content. One idea that Nina had said or mentioned in her session was around doing storytelling and coloring. So if you're using Zoom, you could definitely create kind of breakout rooms and maybe send the kids off in one breakout room, and they are off with someone that's going to tell a fun story. And then you can still have your clients join in for maybe a strategic roundtable around a specific topic that you've curated for that event. I think the other tip that I would say is, as you're thinking through really kind of that personalized experience, making sure that when you're inviting someone to it, you don't forget to like bring that whole experience all the way through. So from first touch all the way until if it's an event, they're kind of getting that kind of really memorable experience. And use video, for example, when you're sending out your invitations, just to make sure that they know, hey, this is really geared for you, and we've come up with a really fun, maybe it's a comic book drawing lesson, or if it's a chef culinary experience, and you're incorporating that kind of video aspect so that they know that this event is really tailored for them. I also think it goes a long way to kind of start to segment your audience and bring smaller groups together. It's really easy to get lost in the noise for large conferences, or if you're just creating general content and it's a big bucket of leads, but there's no real like kind of personalized experience behind it. That can go kind of a long way if you just say, hey, this is pretty exclusive, and we're going to cap it at 10 people that can join. Obviously, you have to figure out ways of how to scale that, but I think it can help with really just kind of bringing your VIP clients in and offering something that's really unique for them. One thing I'll kind of leave it off to. So at Inbound, if you didn't get a chance to attend that conference, there's a couple other companies that were there and creating some pretty interesting experiences. Obviously, we're not sponsored by these companies, but they just stuck out to me as pretty interesting brands. Maybe it's a symptom of the pandemic, and they've come up with more interesting ways to touch or kind of reach people out at their own homes. But check out Assembly, and also we're looking into a company called Sifted, who are creating those culinary experiences. And so we're designing a customer advisory board that will kind of break up the event into 30 minutes of us leading the session, 30 minutes of a chef-led charcuterie board or pasta making or wine pairing. We haven't really decided exactly what we're going to do with that kind of culinary experience, but there's a chef that we've hired, and he's coming on or she's coming on to kind of really lead that session. And we're taking a step back and just joining and having fun and doing something that's out of the ordinary, and then bringing it back in to kind of really round out the event. So I think it's just a nice touch on how do you really design your personas to understand their 5 to 9. And think about how those personas, they're not always just going to be the Charlie, the CEO, on a documented paper, and it's black and white of exactly what that persona looks like. But there's a person behind it, and I really encourage you to go out there and discover who that person is. Okay. Well, that's all I got for today's SmartBug on Tap. Thanks so much for joining. If you have any other ideas around topics or questions that you'd like to get answered by the experts here and I can represent, I would love to hear them. Please reach out to us at SmartBug Media, or you can reach us by email at marketing@smartbugmedia.com. Thanks for joining.